So, I'm retired, living in the former Yugoslavia now, and lesser part of that time, I'm thinking I'll live in the former Soviet Union, and part of that reason is, gets to the point. This video is in reaction to. Uh, I guess a brother who did a reaction video on the deranged. What he calls the deranged DNC. Activists ginning up violence against police and ICE, and uh, I'm basically having flashbacks to, the 24 years of my life I wasted in the city of Chicago. And basically, in the end, I guess I arrived in 1995, and I was young then, like 24, 25, excuse me, and, and there was still I guess the last vestiges of the old left, and also the new left, was kind of, around still, of course. The boomer generation, yeah. So, but, there was still, I don't know, vestiges, let's say, of an older generation from the modern era, post-war, those who had organized in the trade unions and working class neighborhoods, and they had a connection to reality. Factories, work in factories, Teamsters, farm equipment workers, auto workers, also light industrial workers, with Act Two, or the Shoe Workers Union. A friend of mine, he was an old trade union official, 90 years old. He had been a worker, in that, or a worker briefly, and then basically a trade union representative for many years for the Shoe Workers Union. And I should say, in the Communist Party, basically the old Communist Party from the 30s, all the way up until 1991, and the CP degenerated over many decades, but these were original militants from that time, and they were quite connected to as far as one could be connected, I suppose. Given the vicissitudes of the American labor movement and the degeneration of the American labor movement over time, these were people who had, gone through the mass organizing drives of the 30s and 40s and onward. Excuse me. So they were connected to reality. But then, as time went on in Chicago, and especially in the last, 10, 15 years, you got a whole new layer of, what I call, I joke, kind of half joke, I call the gay liberal Nazis. And on this video I was just watching, there was some like lesbian, butch lesbian, maybe, or no, maybe she was a dyke, I whatever. But, Latina, the whole LGBTQ-CIA, profile. And similarly, I met, the other alderman. He's affiliated with DSA, Byron Sigcho Lopez, I guess it is. When I was in the Teamsters 700, as it ended up, working for the city of Chicago as a driver, he came around to one or more local meetings, and I met him. I shook his hand. I talked to him. And, he was, he seemed okay. But over time, I don't want to pick on one immigrant group, but, one of the more active, but, you have to say one of the more active dynamic immigrant groups was the Mexicans in Chicago. And, I was friends with a number of them, co-workers, etc., and also activist comrades, one of whom escaped the massive, I guess, CIA or was it? I guess maybe pre-sponsored massacres in 1968. One of them is still in Chicago, and he was around the Green Party. I was actually in the Green Party. And, there are a number of sincere, Mexican Americans or whatever, Mexican migrants, whatever their immigration status was. I didn't pay too close attention, like on a personal basis to all of that. But over time, anyhow, the more hysterical, liberal, gay, lesbian, activists came to the front. And basically, like this Karen Bass character in LA, they really smell of the CIA, NED, USAID, and they have that whole agenda of open borders, DACA, the Dreamers, Black Lives Matter, we hate you, and then that degenerates further into we hate you, whitey. Yeah, and they're basically just third world nationalists who they hate America. I would say, and they're liberals and they hate white people. They in the end, I don't really think they are tribunes of the working classes. We would have said on the left. At best, they're like Mensheviks. They're reformists at best. With the DSA. I was reading in the Russian National Library about Komuch, which, is basically the DSA. And, they love the red flag and workers' democracy, except, God help you if the workers actually take power. Then they'll start machine gunning you, which is what happens during the October Revolution. That was a very instructive model in history there. People, should look into that. I don't know the English language sources, but, there's at least one Professor Rutkowski in Russia. Anyway, that's kind of off topic. But, so, and then in my own experience, I went out I was working city of Chicago, I guess it was 15 years total, I think it was. And about 15 years. And I went out on disability. I have a heart defect, and I actually had cancer. I was fired in June and then found out I had cancer in like October. And basically, a lot of my coworkers who worked at O'Hare Airport, they came down with cancer because the environment is, it's a toxic soup of jet fuel, fumes, and other toxins. Construction was going on there. Rats would run into our airport maintenance building and die, from the toxicity of the construction site next door. And all during this time, these scumbags, many of whom were like Irish machine scum, they would use Mexican and Ukrainian scabs, many of whom were illegally in the country, as a weapon against mostly, in my case, our experience over there in the AMC, the Airport Maintenance Complex, they would use them as scabs to push them out of the terminals of the airport and into marginal areas of the airport. They would use scabs against the mostly black workers, who had been in Chicago. Their families had probably been in Chicago, let's say about 100 years. And, a lot of older black, men and women, retirees, were getting thrown out of Chicago because, other people in normal countries can't believe this, but these bloodsuckers who run things in America, they are assessing property taxes even on people who are, retired, let alone, or, and everyone else. But, especially, you say you're 80 years old, you're living in the hood, in an apartment or house you've been in your whole life, and you get thrown out on the street or out of the city or God knows what at that age because some bloodsucker wants money from you every year, thousands of dollars, and you're on a fixed income. I mean, it's just absolute criminal madness. And at the same time, these liberals, they preclude any sort of real labor movement in the city of Chicago because they welcome every piece of trash from all over the world to come and scab on people who've been in the city of Chicago for 100 years. I mean, it's insane. And, a population of people, black first and foremost, but also, Irish or even Polish or Italian, etc., who, they fought to organize trade unions, or they were, union members, or even stalwart union members, or, and, what? So there's this attitude in the city that, well, number one, it's about stealing for, probably most aldermen, taking bribes, and then also lording it over other people and punishing your enemies and all of that. And then in the end, doing the bidding of big business, or your tribal leader, whether that leader be Irish or black or Mexican or whatever. So your tribal leader can steal as much, or you can steal as much as possible, and walk off with your ill-gotten gains, while the whole city just craters. What else can I say? But they basically, their identity, race, gender pimping, that was the game from especially the last 10, 15 years, was to race and gender pimp. And, I was brought up as a super liberal, and I was on the so-called left for, many years. And, I was in that world, so I had a certain, I gave them a certain leeway, and I had a certain tolerance for that. But at a certain point, when, like the Mexican migrants were refusing to organize, or, the Uncle Toms were refusing to fight back, especially like at the airport, they just let whoever do whatever in the city administration with the contract, bringing in like a second tier, raising the pension age, cutting wages of new hires by like a third. And these Uncle Toms and I'm sorry, but wetbacks, basically, clout hire Mexicans, and they would be like, oh well, I got mine, it's all a game, and basically half of my family from that region, they founded the state of Michigan in 1840. They married into the American Indian tribes, even in Michigan, northern Michigan, or the whole state of Michigan. And we shed blood and sweat, for the country. In the end, you think about that, and we made sacrifices. My family made terrible sacrifices for the feminist movement. My mother did, for just destroyed the family, fighting Reagan and fighting Kent State University, in my mother's case. And to see these fucking, pimps race pimps and gender pimps. Just, I had one nasty Mexican lesbian. What is it? Not Dyke, the other one, the whatever, Butch, I guess, or whatever she was. Fuck her. But my crazy mother was injured and dying of stage 4 colon cancer. She was going to hospice, and I missed like 2 weeks of work off of, I think I had some leave or something, and I tried to call this house Negro piece of shit, Motisa Leon, to let him know, and he refused to pick up the phone. And, finally I was like, okay, well, I couldn't leave my mother, but, I found like a couple hours to race over there and report in. And before I could open my mouth hardly, this fat, nasty, Mexican, not Dyke, Butch, I guess, she comes at me, like she's gonna like assault me. And I'm like, what? And I was just like, not in that headspace to be aggressive. I said, like, hey, this guy, Elion, I guess he doesn't feel like he has to pick up the phone, but I've been calling him for a week straight. That's why you haven't heard from me, because he didn't pick up the phone. And, and then, this nasty Butch, bum rushes me, and I'm like, what the fuck? And, then finally I explained to, the head-on Tom there, well, my mother has stage 4 colon cancer. She just apparently broke the leg out of the hip socket. She can't even walk. She needs, round-the-clock care, and there's no one else to help. I'm the sole fucking care provider. And I've just been told by, the hospice service, they had to call one in, that she cannot be left alone. And I'm the only person left. And at that point, Aunt Tom, waved the goon Butch off, wetback Butch off, and she said, oh, we're very sorry. Here's your paperwork to fill out, and, it won't be a problem to extend your leave of absence, because, your mother's dying, and you're the only one to take care of her. And, it's unpaid leave, uninsured leave. So what happened? So I got the leave, and it was a vacation, to take care of my injured, dying mother, crazy mother. And when her apartment was being like blown apart by this, management mafia, who was then trying to shove us into a shoebox on the first floor, because her own apartment, as she's dying, is being taken apart to put in new water pipes. The whole building, this happened to. But, it's like they couldn't leave her alone, for whatever, or like finally we had to fight them. And we, I ended up moving the two of us into this mafia old folks home down the street, because it was convenient, and I could deal with the city if I had to, I guess. But I should have moved out to the state of Michigan, because these people, all of them, the old folks home, the building management, they sense weakness at all or an advantage they can take, and they will attack. And even the hospice nurse, oh, she was an awful bitch. Just insinuating that I was abusive, or, like, I hate you, white penis devil. There's no reason for that except you're a sociopath. And that's what all these people are. They're, I think that's what the presenter on that channel, maybe if I post this up on YouTube, I'll, post his video in the comments, I guess, or the description. But, he's pointing out, Mayor Uncle Tom Johnson, he's saying, oh, this is like the Gestapo. Shut the fuck up. My father's family was all murdered in Soviet Belarus as Jews. And these fucking cockroaches like Johnson are invoking the name of my murdered people when, what was the contradiction there? Oh my God. just apart from the head of their party, Biden, and Pritzker, what they're doing in Ukraine, which was part of that whole struggle, and all the Jews that were murdered there, as well as Belarus, where my father's family came from. But, I forgot my point. It's just so fucking crazy. They're basically collaborators. They collaborate with the capitalists of Chicago in order to steal as much as they can, and they're race pimping 24/7 using identity politics. And all the government under Trump, President Trump, is doing now is enforcing as this speaker in the other video points out, all the government is doing is enforcing the immigration laws that every country enforces. If I stay past 30 days in, say, Serbia, I can get deported. I'm not going to violate the law. What's the other part? Or any other country I'm living in, unless I apply for residency, I have to get out in somewhere between, it's 3 months, so 90 days in, say, Serbia, and it's 6 months, so double that, 180 days in, say, Russia, and or Belarus. But anyway, so I'm very aware of that, and I'm on a pension. It's half a pension because they hired this Nazi whore. She had a vagina. She wasn't white, Jamie Reed, but she fucked the mayor. She got her job illegally. And, Asian Americans, probably more than 75%. I was looking up the figures. It's probably close to 90%. Mainland Chinese immigrants who came in the last, I don't know, however many years, 30 years or whatever it was, notwithstanding, Asian Americans are so fascist they would make Hitler blush, and that's what she was. These people, they hate social democracy, and they especially hate social democracy if you're the wrong color and gender for them. And what else can I say? But yeah, they're thoroughly corrupt. I mean, I have friends, who are black at work, and they get screwed over. If they have the wrong attitude towards these crooks and manipulators who are also, whatever color, it's a rainbow coalition of shit over there in the city. So, but, in terms of the principles of it, the actual principles, if you're not some, synthetic left CIA shit lib like these freaks in Chicago are, number one, okay, international solidarity. Don't bomb Iran, don't invade Russia. Let's pick a benighted. Don't invade Africa. Don't invade Burkina Faso. Don't fuck with Burkina Faso, right? If you want to be black and down with the cause, uhuru. Let's just say don't invade Burkina Faso. Number one, but number two is don't import foreign strike breakers like you've been doing, especially for the last 30 to 50 years. Mexican migrants have no business in the USA, okay? Not fucking over the American working class, all right? And most of them are, I'll be generous, because Mexicans are just right next door. So unlike the Poles, who are also very fascist like the Asians, most of them, I would say, shoot or deport them. But in the case of the Mexicans, half of them should be deported at least. And, especially if you're illegal, those agricultural jobs, white and black workers did those in the 70s. That's nonsense that you need a slave from the third world to fill those positions. No, you don't. You need a slave from the third world because you hate workers, you hate America, and or you're some blood-sucking kulak, some rich, country capitalist bastard who wants to suck the blood of the working class and, buy his like third Lamborghini, you know. So, fuck all of you. All of you, hug a migrant shit libs, kulak bloodsuckers, capitalist bloodsuckers. You're filth. These crocodile tears for, these so-called oppressed migrant workers, and this bullshit about ISIS, the Gestapo. You say that to my face, I'll punch you in the face. You're a filthy Uncle Tom. You're and like that other presenter said, like my people were actually my family over in Soviet Belarus. We don't know how many people were in the family because they were all murdered, shot into into a pit on October 30th, 1941. All right, so you talk that bullshit to me with crocodile tears and invoking the name of my people who were actually murdered by Nazis. Yeah, I don't give a fuck, Brandon Johnson. I will fucking knock your teeth out, okay? You fucking Uncle Tom puppet. Shoe collecting, fucking cheating, lying, thieving bastard. So, but you're inciting violence against the federal government, and I hope they lock your ass up, for that shit. You and all the other fucking scumbags who allegedly govern the city of Chicago, but, you're really stealing and you're really, inciting violence while invoking the name of my family who was brutally murdered by the Nazis. After your fucking Nazi whore fired me illegally while I was on disability. In front of useless union reps and my lawyers, and then your human rights board with your slimy Irish bastard says, "Oh, I was sad because I visited some World War II battle sites." No, you fucking piece of shit. I went to the mass graves of my family. The first ghetto rebellion, which occurred on my family's block in Yeshv's Soviet Belarus, where my cousin, I guess she's my cousin, we'll never know, she was murdered in that first ghetto uprising. But you fucking filth are using that as a prop, just like your friends the Zionists. So, fuck all of you. I hope you get your heads cracked open, and I hope you go to fucking prison, because you're all a bunch of fucking criminals.